In our last chapter, we had an introduction to chords, particularly triads, three-note chords. But we have to realize that in a melody, not all of the notes in the melody are going to be part of the chord. I mean, we think about that. A C major chord has only three notes, C, E, G. Would you write a melody that only uses C, E, G over that chord? And chords don't always change every note. Sometimes they change every measure or every two measures, so something we call harmonic rhythm. So let's take a look at my favorite example piece, Mary Had a Little Lamb. So here's Mary Had a Little Lamb, and you can see the melody there. It's just Mary had a little lamb, right? But if we look at the chords, the way this is normally done is that the harmony is simply a C major chord for the first two measures. There are other ways you could harmonize it, but in this case, it would be a tonic chord, a one chord for two measures. And we might just hold it like that, or we might go do, mi, so, mi, so, mi, so. We might have arpeggiated. There's lots of things we could do, but it basically be the chord. Now, the first note of your melody is part of the chord. The second note is not. There's no D in a C major chord. The third note is. The fourth note is not. Then the fifth, sixth, and seventh is. So what we realize is there are chords that are not, notes that are not in the chord. Non-harmonic notes, notes that are not part of the harmony. Well, these non-harmonic notes, you can't put them in randomly. There's certain kinds of notes that work and certain kind of notes that don't. This is an example of one of those kinds of notes. Let me just show you which it is. Okay, grab my pen. We notice that the two D's are not in the chord. So let me circle them if I can. Okay, this note and this note. So why is it we can get away with these notes when if I just jumped around I couldn't? Well, this is what's called a passing tone, because I've got a note that's in the chord and a note that's in the chord and only one space in between. So I put a note that passes from two chord notes. So it passes between two chord notes. Here again, this note's in the chord, this note is in the chord. So my non-chord note or my non-harmonic tone is just a passing note in between. These two notes are a third apart. This fills in the gap. It's a passing note. We pass through it to get to the next chord note. We pass through it to get to the next chord note. Doesn't matter if we're going down or going up. The passing tone is the simplest, easiest, and probably the most common of the non-harmonic tones. But in this chapter, we're going to meet a whole bunch of them. And there are rules. There's some things you just can't do. If you do, it sounds bad. When I say can't do, I mean sounds awkward or bad. You may want that effect, in which case you can do it. But most of the time, when we want it smooth, we want it elegant, we want it to make a lot of sense, there are certain kinds of notes that we know work and certain kinds of notes that we don't work. Passing tones work. Let's meet some others in our next video.